It's been 75 years since the birth of modern China, and a lot's happened since then. From housing to healthcare, everything's improved, helping people live fuller, richer lives.
China has contributed to around 70% of global poverty reduction.
Building friendships around the world. That's China's idea of partnership.
Chinese leadership has been very important in bringing peace, security.
From made in China to innovated in China, Chinese tech now leads the way.
China has made wonderful progress in many areas of science and technology.
From a humble beginning to a global economic power, it's a rags to riches tale.
Yes, you can be profitable in China.
We did not observe any country to sustain such a high growth rate.
Ancient philosophy in modern practice. China shows us how we can live in harmony with nature.
When China talks about modernization, it's talking about a green future.
5 episodes, one incredible journey. Buckle up for the CGTN special series Journey to Modernization from September 30 to October 4, only on CGTN.
Hello and welcome to the CGTN special series Journey to Modernization, commemorating the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. From the world's largest high-speed rail network to groundbreaking space exploration and cutting-edge AI industries, China has rapidly transformed into a global tech powerhouse. What's the story behind this remarkable transformation? How are tech advancements impacting our life and even global cooperation? What are China's future goals of tech innovation, and what are the implications for the world? Join us today in Beijing as we embark on the journey of China's tech revolution. I'm Xu Qianduo. Joining me in the first part of today's discussion are Professor Zheng Yi from the Institute of Automation at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Zhang Fan, Associate Professor of Astronomy at Beijing Normal University, Professor Mu Mingpu, Scientific Director of the Institute of Neuroscience at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Professor Bert Hoffman, former director of the East Asian Institute at the National University of Singapore, and Bernard Foym, CEO of the Lunar Explorers Society, executive director of the International Lunar Exploration Working Group, and Shahbaz Han, director of the UNESCO Regional Office for East Asia and the representative to China, Republic of Korea, Japan, Mongolia, and DPRK. 2024 marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. So what have been the milestone achievements in its 75-year journey of technological innovation? How have these advancements helped position China on the global stage? First, let's start with Professor Han.
China has made wonderful progress in many areas of science and technology, especially in the communication and information, with the largest 5G network in the areas of renewable energy, with the largest floating solar system, bringing the prices of solar energy, solar panels so low in the areas of wind energy, in the areas of transportation. There is a revolution which China has been able to bring through science and technology, and very importantly, this fast train network that's so impressive in the areas of genetic engineering, in the areas related to also for the vaccines and so on. So also in the areas of space exploration, and the first commercial flight C919 is a wonderful example of China's progress in all areas of science and technology. And now China is also a leader in artificial intelligence, in quantum computing, and in big data, and also offering these benefits of science and technology not only to the socio-economic development of China, but also to the other nations around the world.
Professor Zheng Yi, from your academic perspective, how do you see the milestone achievements?
I think the most advanced and important advancement in China concerning information technology and communication, is the information infrastructure that we have been built. Starting from, our own computing system, and also then to the networking, and then now it's AI infrastructure. So I think this will be fundamentally important to all areas of science and technology in China. So I'll see it as an infrastructural innovation happened decades for China.
Other infrastructure has been as important. The internet connectivity in China is phenomenal and has, of course, sparked much activities around the country. Whereas before, if you were in a remote area of China, you had no way of accessing the market, and it was all very cumbersome. You had to work through collectives and connecting it with urban-based companies that really took their share. Now you can sell through Alibaba. Now you can sell through JD, and you can also get the credit from them. So it has revolutionized doing business in China.
Mm-hmm. And there's very rapid progress in the area of biotechnology. Mm-hmm. I would mention several aspects. One particular development that attracts lots of attention is the recent development of synthetic starch. The investigators in Chinese Academy were able to synthesize starch from carbon dioxide and from scratch, and with only 11 steps through the so-called chemoenzymatic processes, they were able to produce starch very efficiently, more efficiently than the natural process of photosynthesis. This is going to be a groundbreaking development, and they are now enlarging this laboratory achievement to the industrial scale. And I think in a very near future, the important food shortage, the problem of the food shortage in the world could be addressed by this technology. Now, this is one of the biotechnology that's rapidly developed in China, synthetic biology, and also the biotechnology based on genetic engineering, genetic editing. The new technology that originated in the development in China are now are moving rapidly, and the genetic editing is also applied to the cure of human diseases. And this is also a very important frontier that China is pushing very hard and is leading in many aspects.
Mm-hmm. Well, speak of infrastructure, Zhang Fan. China basically within 2 decades' time has established the largest or most extensive high-speed rail network. How do you look at that? Rapid extension of this high-speed railway, from big cities to even smaller, basically get the entire country connected. Physically.
It's quite impressive. And transportation is important because in modern society, when you have sophisticated manufacturing, each person, even city, does only a small part of the jigsaw puzzle, and then you need to transport things over and having people move over rapidly and efficiently to be able to build up your entire complex system of economy. I think the railway in particular showed when you have this kind of foresight and insight into how the economy works, you can do policy-driven innovation, and it does work. I remember that at the very beginning, this high-speed rail network really met a lot of resistance. People were saying it's going to be too expensive. Laying the tracks is going to be, the cost is going to be astronomical. The tickets will be too expensive, and nobody will be traveling on it. But nowadays, if you look, anybody, if you ask them, they all be traveling on 3/4 of all the travels are done on a high-speed network. And the only reason why there's a quarter left is because there are second, third tier cities that the network hasn't reached yet. Mm-hmm. But in the I think in the near future, the high-speed rail will keep on developing into these smaller cities. And then for the main lines, I think you might be able to see maglev trains that's twice as fast as the current trains. So that would really change things. When you can move from one part of the country to another economic center, from Beijing to Shanghai, for example, within like 2-3 hours, then like change the whole dynamics, right? You don't have to think twice before traveling down there and talk to your clients. So I look forward to what kind of new economic models they'll bring, and I think there will be quite substantial changes as well.
I think China's high-speed rail network basically now goes beyond China, is having a global impact. For example, this Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway in Indonesia is of course being welcomed by local customers. And also I know that Professor Han has taken the train. Let's hear his experience.
I've been living in Jakarta before coming to Beijing, and I have done Jakarta-Bandung travel many times. It has been very frustrating. It used to take more than 3 hours because a number of universities are in Bandung, and UNESCO's work, I needed to go there very regularly. It was so difficult with the traffic blockages and the issues related to so much traffic and people being stuck there for 3 hours. And now with the Jakarta-Bandung rail, the high-speed rail collaboration between China and government of Indonesia is a wonderful example. This 3-hour journey over about more than 140 kilometers has been reduced to less than 45 minutes. It's affordable. And also very importantly, the financing mechanisms which China could come up with in collaboration with the government of Indonesia, they are a wonderful example. And the technology transfer to the Indonesian people, as I learn, this is a very beautiful example of bringing that South-South cooperation, technology transfer, and building a rail facility which will also be able to go to the other cities. Like already there are discussions about expanding this network to Surabaya, which will already bring like 12-hour journey to around 3 hours. So great example of collaboration as part of the Belt and Road Initiative and linking the benefits of technology to the other nations who need it, and great examples within China of linking cities, bringing connectivity, and also with the links with trade and commerce. This is a great example of China's development benefiting Chinese people and other nations together.
Well, let's move on to this area of high-end manufacturing. For example, C919, Zhangfang, the first domestically developed this single-aisle aircraft. Many people are looking at that, asking the question like, what kind of breakthrough, if it is, does it represent in terms of the Chinese pursuit of like high-end manufacturing here?
Right. Once you have a large-scale project such as this complex project, it does push all areas of development. For example, in materials, that's built completely in China. That's 20% of the plane is composite material. The rest is very good aluminum lithium alloy. So the weight is lower, and the noise level is also quite a bit lower as compared to competitors. And also the aerodynamic design is quite up to date. If you look at the wings, the upsweeping little tips shows you it's a very modern design, and that all benefited from, once again, infrastructure. For example, wind tunnels. China built a huge number of those things, large and small, high speed and low speed. So that all contributed to this plane coming to fruition as mature as it is right now.
Right. Professor Hoffman, of course, domestically, we are seeing the C919, receiving these orders, like about 1,000. What are the prospects of the international market for C919?
Well, I think the airplane first needs to prove itself on the domestic market, and that's not different from Airbus or Boeing when they started. And so the market will build from there once the reputation of the airline increases. But what was just said was really interesting, because it was indeed this airplane is indeed a great international corporation, and it has helped China to move faster. But it also means that really others benefit as well, from France to Germany to the United States. They all have a piece of this airplane, if you want. And I think that's a great lesson to draw.
Are we seeing like more competition?
Well, I'm an economist, so I think competition is a good thing, and particularly in a duopoly market for large airplanes, that was Boeing and Airbus. I'm old enough to remember the 70s when the Europeans said, okay, well, look, we have to have a competitor for the American producers, and in those days there were still a number of them, and that worked, and it sort of distributed the rents to some extent. But a duopoly is still not a healthy situation. Having more in this space is probably a good thing.
As we reflect on these achievements, let's take a close look at how these tech innovation have impacted our own daily lives.
中国的新势力那个新能源车发展得很好啊，无人机也发展得很好。我们在深圳大疆就一个很好的一个品牌。
我觉得高铁时代真的是太方便了。
比如说像这种导航啊，有些老年人可能不太认路啊，只要教他们如何认识导航，他们就可以在各个地方都可以游玩，比较方便。
那个电动车嘛，它是可以无人驾驶的嘛。就是最近嘛，我表哥不是买了一辆那个，就是一个人骑的电动车。那个都可以不用手扶，它可以不用导，我就觉得这个很新奇。
What do you think is the coolest Chinese technology that's out at the moment?
Probably the BYD.
Well, I think Huawei is the best technology if I compare with Apple.
I saw one video recently, and in a restaurant, I think instead of waiters and waitresses, it was robots that were serving people food.
China actually has turned into a manufacturing workshop of the whole world.
لا أنا شايف إن الصين بتستخدم التكنولوجيا في الحاجات المفيدة للإنسان. صناعات عربيات مجال الاتصالات كل الكلام ده هي متفوقه فيه جدا وحاجه كويسه جدا طبعا ان احنا نلاقي الكلام ده موجود وبتستخدم في حاجات تنفع البشريه مش دمار يعني.
Have you ever used Chinese technology?
I'm pretty sure I have. I have TikTok, so.
I know they are big in the phone market and GPS technology like that. So I think it's important that we look at technology as important for all humans, regardless of where it might have come from.
In this part, we'll dive into two major groundbreaking areas in China's tech advancement, namely space exploration and artificial intelligence. First, let's start with a brief review of China's space odyssey.
确定目标和实现这个目标，这个差距是质的变化，是从一张纸变成现实。点火。
我国成功地发射了第一颗人造地球卫星。
那段历史是很艰苦的，靠什么？要靠一种精神。
我自愿从事载人航天事业。我奉命执行首次载人飞船飞行任务。我已出征，感觉良好。
同学们看到了吗？
中国空间站永远值得期待。
发展载人航天事业非常明确的目标，我们要和平利用太空，我们没有排斥任何国家。
让全世界任何人在任何位置都能够享受到来自中国的航天高科技服务，这就是我们的愿望，这是我们希望为人类做的工作。
We can see the rocket go. We can hear the rocket go. We're close enough to feel the rocket go. What a fantastic launch!
这个工程走了20年，这是航天人向祖国的汇报。
So China's space program, it began in the 1950s. Professor Fu, what's your observation? How do you see this progress in this area?
At first, I had a long experience of
collaborating with China. I started in working with astronomers from Beijing Astronomical Observatories in the 90s. We also used the first largest telescope in Xinglong. So we had a good history of scientific collaboration, working for really studying stars, planets. And then I had an opportunity later to have another chance of collaborating with China, because I was leading the first mission to the moon of Europe called Smart One. We launched in 2003. And we shared our data with our Chinese colleagues. And as a reciprocity, they invited us to join into the Chang'e Lunar Exploration Program. And for this, I used my role as a scientist, but also as a diplomat, or also as engineers. And we defined, for instance, a contribution from the European Space Agency to the Chang'e program. We gave some support from ground station. So I have to say, we have seen a beautiful, impressive development of space technology. And the latest in town was the sample return from Chang'e 6, from the far side of the moon, where there is a giant impact basin, and there are some very interesting results, actually.
And I also want to mention the lunar station. There is talk by scientists, the astronomers and astrophysicists. They are interested in deep space. They think that the far side of a lunar surface could be a good place for an observatory.
Professor Foyin, how likely is it?
A lot of possibility for international collaboration beyond getting the material or the resources from the moon, but for astronomical studies.
Mm-hmm. Professor Foyin.
Yeah, so actually we have worked on various concepts of, we call it moon village, of various stations, some at the pole of the moon, which actually it's 2 weeks per month. The pole of the moon doesn't see the Earth. So you are partly in the far side. So this is where I plan to retire. In 15 years, I will go travel to the moon, and I plan to have a base for scientific research. We hope that I can host you there. And a bit further, you have a place which is the quietest in the solar system. And we have made some tests with radio antenna, actually in places on Earth, to test what we could do on the moon, to detect the dark edges of the universe, but also to search for other stellar systems or Jupiter around other stars, which are very strong emitter in radio. But it's very interdisciplinary science. And there, the model that we have on space station is also very useful. On the Tiangong, or International Space Station, not only we do science and technology, but also we inspire the next generation, and it's also a place for international cooperation. And that's an area where China has very much developed. In the lunar mission, for instance, we have payloads that are built by other countries. We have some from France, from Sweden, and in the International Lunar Research Station, you have more than 10 countries that want to be part of it. In Europe, we have worked on the concept of a moon village, which is also very inclusive of emerging countries, of countries also in all parts of the globe, but inclusive also of the different disciplines. And so I think in this, the International Research Station will be a very great advances. And I would say we are talking about resources. I don't think that water is the best resources on the moon. The best resources on the moon is human creativity. How you can foster the kid and the public to innovate and to find new solutions. This is what is going to unleash even more benefit than just finding water on the moon.
John Fan, in terms of commercialization of this exploration, how far are we from, say, having a space trip, as part of tourism, or even a trip to the moon? For the regular folks, of course.
Well, first depends on how much you are willing to pay. Second, it depends on how much you want to return. If it's one-way trip, then it's a lot simpler. Yes, Professor Foyin probably was enthusiastic enough to volunteer to basically, leave his retirement on the moon.
I will retire on the moon, and you are all welcome to join me. You can ask 1 day off from your company, One day on the moon is 1 month, so you can stay with me. But to Mars, maybe that's for when I'm 100 years old.
Right. So yeah, the commercial companies, they're making a lot of progress. Obviously, globally, SpaceX has really been pushing the per kilo sort of cost going up into space. They can do $3,000 US.
Right.
The other people can do between 10 to 20K per kilograms. And in China, you have a very vibrant scene of startup companies. One of them had just been last year been able to put a methane oxygen engine that's very good for usability, the methanes burn very cleanly, to put into orbit. So that's even ahead of SpaceX. So the gap between the Chinese commercial companies and the foreign competitors are sort of closing quite rapidly.
Well, Professor Foying, what about the space station, the Chinese space station? And that offers, of course, for research, not only for the Chinese scientists, but also, say, international collaboration there?
Yeah, indeed. This has been a very exciting development since we witnessed, some of the first modules which were launched toward the stations every year. So we had some new modules. So we had in 2022 the 2 additional modules, Wentian and Mengtian, which were assembled. And now the station is complete with astronauts which are making a long time stay towards the permanent occupation of space. So it's a very impressive what is happening now on the Tiangong station. Actually, on the Tiangong space station, the United Nations launched a program where there have been international student payloads, 17 experiments, which are to be flown on Tiangong. So it's a good way also to use this platform as a platform for space for peace, space for inspiration, and space for the future.
Yeah, space for peace, space for the future. Professor?
May I add
yeah, go ahead, Professor Pu.
There is an active call for proposals to perform experiments in the space station, an international call for proposal to take advantage of the microgravity environment for pioneer science experiment in biology, in material science, in physics, in physiology. And in fact, I know there are programs already supported by the China brand projects in studying the effects of the microgravity, the prolonged exposure in the microgravity environment on the brain function. All these are important studies for future exploration, as well as their fundamental question to understand what does the gravity do to embryonic development, for cell differentiation. All this, I think there's room for a lot of international collaboration. I think in the NASA program, they have previously pursued many experiments. I think those experiments no longer continuing. I think the China space station offers this opportunity for the next 10 years, scientific experiments in space.
Yes, let's move on to the next topic, artificial intelligence. Before we start the discussion, let's turn to our audience to see their experience of using AI technology in their daily lives and work.
Thank you. I'm from Beijing Foreign Studies University. So as a graduate student majoring in Chinese and English interpreting, I've been accustomed to utilizing AI tools for many years because I frequently use 文心一言 or ChatGPT to evaluate my translation and offer some suggestions on how to prepare for an interpreting or mock tasks. And also, when it comes to practicing spoken English, instead of finding some English partners in real life, I like to turn to Doubao because it offers different kinds of virtual characters with different personalities. I can either childishly talk to Peppa Pig or talk about some philosophic topics with an English professor.
My father always asks for his AI a map or Baidu map for the direction. And whenever he said he wants to go to a certain destination or go to some places, and he will say, 小度, please let me to certain kind of places, and then the mobile phone or the artificial intelligence in certain applications will lead him to his destination or some certain kind of places. So I think the navigation is part of the use of artificial intelligence in our daily lives.
We are already seeing extensive use of AI technologies. But where are we now in terms of the status quo of AI technology, Zheng Yi?
It's exactly like what I said. It's still an information processing system. They don't really understand. I'll have to say they don't really understand. They process the information. They pretend that they could understand, and they persuade you to trust they could understand. They can solve problems, they can do reasoning, but there's not so much understanding. So for example, now we can recognize, okay, this is a book, this is a rabbit, but when just changing one pixel in a picture, that the AI system will misclassify a rabbit into a truck. So for human, they will never make this kind of mistake. The mechanisms that AI is using for solving problems is so much different compared to the human brain for now. So I think it's still, it's a race of, let's say, 100 meters. We're still within the 10 meters for now. So it doesn't really matter that whether you're more advanced or not. It's still the very beginning, of the real artificial intelligence.
Professor Pu, what about this application in the industrial sector? Are they kind of similar still at the primary stage?
The current stage of AI, or the generative AI, is already very powerful, and very powerful for many applications in different settings, in industry, in application to scientific problem, and in medicine. They are all very useful, and they are rapidly progressing to be more powerful. But there is a limitation. The current version of the large language model, ChatGPT and the like, they require a large amount of data and a huge amount of computational power. They cost a lot of energy, and only big companies can afford to train the big models. There's estimate that very soon the cost of energy for building this model, or even for the use of this large model, will be such a huge amount of energy that the most society cannot sustain. Human brain is a great machine, so if they can learn from the brain, eventually we might have a more energy efficient AI in the future, maybe 10 years from now. That would be the future of real AI that would be sustainable, beneficial to society. I would call it green AI in the future. And I think that depends on the merge of our understanding of the human brain, and learn from how the human brain works, learn the architecture of the brain and the algorithm that the human brain is using to solve problems. And I think this would help the future development of AI.
In July, the 78th UN General Assembly adopted a resolution proposed by the Chinese side to strengthen international cooperation on AI capacity building. So what does this indicate, Chinese policy on AI and its global AI strategy? How can we promote AI for good governance as well as to serve global development? First, let's have Professor Han's thoughts on these questions.
AI is one of those areas which has immense potential for benefiting humanity in all areas, like in the medical sciences, for example, or in the areas of agriculture, in the areas of new discoveries. But at the same time, there are challenges if it is not used properly. And also because some nations are developing very fast as compared to some other nations who may not have the same facilities and know-how. China's contribution by leading this resolution about capacity building in AI and getting over digital divides is a very important resolution to bring the cooperation which is necessary to bring the capacity building for all nations, and it was strongly supported by the other member states, so wonderful. So this is a great development, and I hope because of this great development there would be more cooperation between China and other countries and between other nations.
So there is a necessity, there's an urgency probably in terms of good governance of AI technology, and of course, global cooperation here.
I would have to say that the capacity building resolution proposed by China, but endorsed by 140 countries, is truly important. It shows our understanding about what do we mean by capacity building of AI. For the countries like China, it has the obligation and ability, capacity, really to help the world to build AI infrastructures, bringing the experiences of AI application to the other countries where they haven't explored that kind of opportunities. Well, also on the other side, it's of course not right, to just lock your technology within your country. So AI is for common good. It's an infrastructure, like I said. It's like the electricity that everybody has to have. So in the field of AI and also in the era of AI, so you must do leaving no one behind, simply because it's public good. Yeah.
Well, looking ahead, Professor Hoffman, what technologies or trends do you think we should keep an eye on?
Well, to me, the trends are more important. All the experts, they know much more about the technologies, and I look at the future technologies, the new quality productive forces as being announced, sort of the scientific underpinning of that. I think that is all fine, and China has its hand on that. What my biggest concern that I have my eyes on it is really a split up of the scientific world into multiple blocks. And yes, we are at a point in tension in geopolitics, if you want, but we really risked of having separate developments of China and then the US and maybe the EU. That would be a great loss to the world, because a lot of these scientific discoveries that we're talking about would not be feasible if it were just the blocks on their own. So that international cooperation is absolutely critical. And how to go about that? Well, one of the key things for China to think about is how would China operate as a technological leader? It has been a follower for 25, 30 years. But it's there. And according to an Australian think tank recently, there's over 90% of the important fields of technologies of the future, China is already in the lead. Now, how can China go about in managing that, in being, if you want, an origin of technology, in sharing with the world, and to develop those mechanisms in that? I think one very particular, and it has been said many times, but let me just bring it together. One very particular area where is this international cooperation, mission-driven international cooperation, and that's climate change, it is food security, it is energy security, it is space cooperation. So specific areas where China has its expertise, but where also the international community has its expertise, combining that, setting up real programs, working together, rubbing shoulders with other scientists from other countries, I think is going to be very important. And space is a very particular example. Even in the Cold War, the Russians and the United States put up the space station in times of great tension. And so that is possible, and I think it's necessary in a number of areas, but it would also defang some of the tensions that are currently that are emerging.
Mm-hmm. In that respect, Professor Hoffman, how do you look at the tech restriction, for example, from the US in terms of export of semiconductors to the Chinese side, Chinese companies?
So I think they're a very blunt tool. I understand some of the motivation. The United States has a really hard time in accepting that China is now basically almost equivalent, is the same size. It is a technological leader in many areas, and the US is very uncomfortable with it. So if I were to give the United States advice, to say, well, show a good example on how a leading nation can work. And yes, there are some risks. We talked about some of the risk in AI. We talked about some of the risk in computing. A lot of it comes actually down to computing power. But there should be mechanisms where you can say, well, you can share that computing power and the most advanced chips for those areas in which we agree, for those areas in which we, US and China, can help mankind. That's not too difficult. That happened during the Cold War. That can happen now. So it's too blunt an instrument, I would say. And there's refinement possible that would help us all.
Mm-hmm. I see the current situation this way. For the most recent 2 to 3 years, for Chinese, computing chip development, we can say it's a lot more advanced compared to, several years ago, simply because of this kind of pressure. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to say is, on the other side, it's this kind of trying doesn't really hurt China in the long term. Now, what I see is that we are getting benefit from it simply because that I think that it helps China to realize we have to do it on our own. You cannot rely on others. Well, on the other side, it also tells us when you are strong enough, offer your help. So you cannot lock, like I said, you shouldn't and cannot lock your technology simply because this is electricity. Mm-hmm. This is all what the humanity need. Create this kind of technology that is beneficial to all and provide them to all.
Well, on that, we are coming to the end of today's discussion. Many thanks to our panel of distinguished guests and audience for joining us for the discussion of the CGTN special series, Journey to Modernization. I'm Xu Qinduo. See you next time.
What kind of technology would you like in the future to make your life better?
I think the AI development's really cool.
I don't think I'm fully on board with artificial intelligence just yet, just because it's not fully well-rounded, and there's still a lot of testing to be done with that.
How do you think technology is going to change the future then? How might it impact your life in the future?
Well, driverless people don't have to drive cars, I think, in the future when you see all these things that's going to happen and things like that. Flights, everything's got to be all robots. I mean, they've got cashiers now, all robots.
叫什么？机器人是吧？将来对老年人的养老、保姆照顾，这都寄予很大的厚望。
I'm really excited to see what AI is going to be able to do in healthcare to make sure patients are getting all the screening and testing that they need, and to make sure that all their data is being shared with their medical teams, so we can cut down on patients not getting diagnosed in time or being misdiagnosed.